Show a quick flash of a powerful CEO in a suit, then a tight shot of Darnell's terrified face, then a hand hitting a mop bucket, in a room of millionaires. When Victoria Sterling collapsed, only one black man moved. He wasn't invited. He was just a janitor. But he knew CPR. He pushed past the panic, breathed air into the lungs of a dying billionaire, and saved her life. And for daring to touch her, for the crime of saving her life, Darnell Washington was called inappropriate. The black man was humiliated. He was fired. Tonight we exposed the shocking story of how a billion-dollar empire rewarded a hero with ruin, and why the CEO herself is about to uncover a truth that will bring her entire world crashing down. You won't believe what happened next. Dial 911 immediately. Her lips are turning blue. Darnell Washington's cry was sharp, slicing through the air as he abandoned his mop and sprinted across the polished floor. A collective, horrified gasp rippled around the executive conference table. Moments prior, Victoria Sterling, the formidable billionaire CEO of Sterling Holdings, had commanded the long oak table in downtown Chicago, her voice a testament to financial stability as she reviewed the quarterly figures. Then, the strength fled. A hand fluttered to her chest. Her breathing hitched. The room dissolved into a dreadful silence as her frame seized twice, then slumped to the marble floor. Initially, a paralyzing disbelief held the room captive. 7 high-powered executives, their tailored suits representing fortunes Darnell would never see, simply froze. "She's surely jesting," someone mumbled. "My God, summon security," another whispered. The grim reality struck when Victoria Sterling remained motionless, her lips darkening to a terrifying purple, but Darnell offered no hesitation. He surged past the perimeter of expensive fragrances and luxury fabrics. Darnell stepped back. A voice barked, "You have no clearance here." Another snapped, "Out now. I am certified in CPR." Darnell yelled, yet his expertise was dismissed. Victoria lay inert on her side, one arm fallen across her chest, her lips a ghastly gray-blue. Respiration had ceased. Darnell dropped to his knees beside her. "Miss Sterling, can you hear me?" he whispered, a tremor of panic climbing his throat. 2 fingers pressed against her carotid artery. No pulse. He acted on instinct. A single free CPR workshop attended at the Southside Chicago Community Center, a mere necessity for a food voucher, now provided a lifeline. The instructor's words were suddenly louder than the chaos. "If they aren't breathing, you become their lungs." He tilted her head, sealed her nostrils, and leaned in. "Is he kissing her?" Someone shrieked. "Disgusting," cried another. "Remove him." A blinding pain tore across Darnell's back. A heavy object, a security baton. Perhaps an umbrella had struck him. He swallowed a groan, maintained focus, delivering to rescue breaths before locking his hands and beginning compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another brutal impact landed on his shoulder. He winced, but continued the relentless counts. "Filthy janitor," a voice hissed. "Do not lay a hand on her." The boardroom erupted into pandemonium, but Darnell remained an anchor in the storm. His arm screamed, his back pulsed with pain, and his eyes burned. Yet he did not yield. No, he ground out through clenched teeth. "You won't perish here." 25-26-20-7. A hand grabbed his shoulder, yanking him backward. Darnell wrenched himself free, delivered more compressions, then leaned down for 2 final breaths. Suddenly, Victoria's chest jerked. She expelled a violent cough, then inhaled a massive, ragged breath, like someone surfacing from the deepest ocean. Her eyelids fluttered. She was breathing. Darnell collapsed, his frame trembling uncontrollably. His back felt scalded, his shoulders raw, his hands numb. But she was alive. He had saved her. The suits now swarmed their CEO, their panic clumsy and overwrought. "Miss Sterling, Victoria, hold on." The boardroom doors burst open, and paramedics flooded in, swiftly taking charge, securing Victoria onto a stretcher. One paramedic paused, turning back, who administered CPR. "I did." Darnell managed, his voice barely a rasp before he could elaborate. A tall, silver-haired man, Richard Hartwell, the CFO, his badge prominently displayed, stepped forward, his face etched with pure disdain. "Your name?" he demanded. "Darnell Washington," he stated, straightening his posture. "I'm a janitor." "You pressed your mouth to Miss Sterling," the CFO pronounced, the implication being contamination, not salvation. "She required air," Darnell countered. "I will review all security footage," the CFO snapped. "You are to vacate the premises immediately. Do not return until contacted." Darnell's throat tightened. The wound on his back throbbed. He looked at the circle of executives whose leader he had just rescued from an agonizing death. Not a single expression of gratitude was offered. Darnell bent to retrieve his bucket with unsteady hands and pushed it out of the boardroom. Each step was an unbearable weight. He could not know that an entirely different truth was already unfolding at the hospital. A revelation poised to shatter his life forever. That evening, Darnell was hunched on a rigid bus seat, swallowed by the city's anonymous crowd. His posture curved inward, an attempt to fold himself away. Exhaustion and emptiness hollowed his eyes, which reflected the streetlights as long, blurred streaks. Night had consumed his familiar Southside neighborhood. By the time the bus dropped him off, the only sounds were the distant rumble of a freight train and the lively shouts of children playing nearby, a world utterly separate from his own lived reality. Jasmine, barefoot and clutching her well-loved teddy bear, met him at the door. "You're late, Daddy," she worried, her voice tiny. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," Darnell replied, a pervasive, necessary untruth. "Just a frantic day." Dinner was a quiet affair of reheated macaroni and cheese and leftover stir-fry. Jasmine recounted her school day, and Darnell offered intermittent nods, his mind still trapped in the cold, gilded cage of the morning's boardroom. He forced a smile as Dorothy Freeman, the neighbor who provided childcare during his night shifts, waved goodbye. Once Jasmine was asleep. He lay on the thin mattress, the sputtering heater the only sound in the dark. His fingers sought the bruise on his back, a sharp, constant throb. He closed his eyes, but the image of Victoria Sterling lying lifeless beneath his hands played in an endless, overexposed loop. It salvaged a life, yet all they saw was a poor janitor, a black single father who had dared to touch a billionaire. He remained oblivious. The moment he breathed life into the fading CEO was about to redefine his future, though not in the manner he'd hoped. The next morning, Darnell Washington stood before the towering Sterling Holdings structure, clad in the same gray uniform he had worn for 3 months. The sun had barely cast its amber light across the plaza. He tightened his grip on his lunch, a plastic grocery sack containing a peanut butter sandwich and a bruised apple, clinging to the hope that normalcy would resume. He took a deep breath and reached for the revolving door. An arm immediately blocked his path. "You are denied entry," the security guard stated, his voice devoid of inflection. Darnell blinked. "Excuse me, I work here night shift, 22nd floor." The guard refused eye contact. "I am under instruction to prohibit your entry." A cold dread spread through Darnell. "Why, I committed no error." "Contact human resources," the man replied, turning away as if closing a file. Darnell stood frozen in the entrance. The morning wind cut through his thin jacket as streams of office workers flowed past him without acknowledgement. He felt like a spectre unseen while working, now completely exiled. He circled to the staff entrance, clutching a faint hope of a simple misunderstanding, perhaps a scheduling error. Perhaps they needed to discuss the CPR. At the service desk, the night supervisor looked up, startled. "Darnell Washington, wait here." Darnell waited in the narrow corridor near the lockers. His name was still messily scrawled on locker number 7. 10 minutes later, the supervisor returned, his expression blank, holding a sealed envelope. "Yup, terminated," he stated. Something clean and brutal snapped inside Darnell's chest, like a breaking bone. "Terminated? But why? What was my offense?" The supervisor merely shrugged. "HR cited inappropriate conduct involving senior personnel. That is the extent of my knowledge." Darnell's hand shook as he tore open the envelope. Inside lay a termination letter and his final paycheck. No severance, no clarification. Just the phrase, "Employment ended immediately." Inappropriate conduct echoed in his skull like a deafening alarm. Asterisk, he stood in the narrow hallway long after the supervisor left, a single door closing behind him with the finality of a verdict. Asterisk, asterisk, his legs gave out and he collapsed onto a bus stop bench. His phone vibrated. A co-worker's message. A screenshot from a group chat. "See that? That janitor creep was all over Miss Sterling when she passed out. Looked like he was kissing her. Disgusting. Was that assault?" Darnell's chest seized. His fingers went cold. They had corrupted the truth. The CPR, the breaths that secured her life, had been twisted into something vile. His phone vibrated again. A grainy security cam still image, blurry but damning. Darnell leaning toward Victoria Sterling. A moment of salvation reframed as evidence of his downfall. He let the phone fall onto his thigh. Above him, a colossal billboard displayed Victoria Sterling's powerful, smiling face beneath the slogan, "Integrity, Vision, Leadership." He felt nauseated. The bus returned him to the dim apartment in Southside, Chicago. "Jasmine ran out your home early. They dismissed me," he said. Her eyes widened. "Why? I don't know," he lied, forcing a smile. "It's just a miss." Dorothy Freeman watched him from the kitchen counter. The television muted. "You appear spectral." "I'm fine, Dorothy," Darnell replied. Another lie. Simply exhausted. Night arrived. He lay staring into the darkness, the heater complaining. The muffled sounds of an argument and a child's soft cry drifted from the hallway. Life continued. Only Darnell's felt suspended. He powered his phone on. The messages were relentless. A voice memo from the service department girl. "Hey, I'm unsure what occurred, but people are claiming you were inappropriate with Miss Sterling. You should probably maintain silence for a while." He shut the phone off. Inappropriate. A weaponized word for those predisposed to believe the worst. Darnell closed his eyes, recalling the sharp, life-affirming jerk of Victoria's chest beneath his hands. The return of her first breath. He had saved a life. Yet, he was now treated as if his hands were too poor, too dark, too low to possess that right. He buried his face in the pillow and wept. Salvation should have been a triumph. Instead, in this city, in this system, it was the eradication of his own life. Tomorrow, he would begin the search again, knocking on doors, offering to clean whatever space would hire him. But tonight, the injustice was too burdensome. He did not know that high above the city, in a softly illuminated penthouse, Victoria Sterling had jolted awake from a nightmare, clutching her chest, her heart hammering, the faint echo of an unfamiliar voice pulling her back from the abyss. She simply did not yet know his name. Victoria Sterling sat rigidly on the edge of her king-size bed, her body drenched in cold sweat. Early morning light filtered through the penthouse curtains, casting a pale, chilly gold wash across the room. Her heart hammered wildly, threatening to fracture her ribs. The nightmare had recurred the fourth consecutive night. In it, she was suspended in a black, suffocating void, her arms reaching desperately for purchase. No light, no sound, only all-consuming emptiness. Then the voice, a man's strained yet steady, slicing through the darkness. Breathe, come back. Each time she awoke gasping as if dragged from the bottom of a cold sea. The name of the man fading before she could grasp it, leaving only a compelling, persistent pull in her chest. Victoria rubbed her face, took a final, steadying breath, and rose, walking barefoot across the cool marble to the kitchen. The automatic coffee machine beeped softly, perfection ensured by her assistant since the night before. As the rich aroma filled the air, Victoria leaned against the counter, her eyes drifting to the city below. Chicago was stirring at her feet. Taxis, cyclists, street vendors setting up their stalls in the biting cold. She stood 30 floors above it all, sequestered by glass, capital, and silence. But this morning, a dissonance existed. She scrolled through her phone, contract approvals, press releases, a video interview request, nothing regarding the incident. She opened the Sterling Holdings internal portal, still nothing. Her brow furrowed. Someone had preserved her life. The physicians had been unambiguous. Sudden cardiac arrest. Survival rates were below 10% without immediate CPR. Someone had sustained her heart, breath by breath, until help arrived. Yet, no one would reveal his identity. Her executives had been courteous but evasive. The situation is handled, ma'am. We took appropriate internal measures, Miss Sterling. These non-answers sent a prickle across her skin. He placed their hands on her chest, who pressed his mouth against hers, imparting life. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind sought the dream. The voice raspy with exertion yet resolute, yanking her from the edge. She could almost feel the hands, the pressure on her ribs, the warmth of the breath near her face. Who was he? Why the secrecy? Victoria Sterling was not a woman to be kept uninformed, not within her own dominion, and certainly not regarding her own survival. She picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. Raymond, she stated when the head of security answered. I required the security footage from the boardroom, the morning of the incident. Ma'am, HR has reviewed the recording. Legal retains a copy. I did not inquire who reviewed it. Victoria cut in her voice now, sharp steel. I require it in my inbox now. Yes, ma'am. She ended the call and returned to the window. The glass now reflected only her own pale, distant face, like someone pulled back from the void without knowledge of her rescuer, a woman whose life had been returned, but not the truth. 20 minutes later the email arrived. Victoria opened the video file. On the screen, she watched herself through the cold, impartial lens of the surveillance camera. Standing at the conference table, mid-speech, she faltered. A hand flew up. Her body wavered, then collapsed like a heavy shroud. People leaped up. A scream. Eyes darted around, but no one moved toward her. Then, the far door burst open. A man in a gray janitor's uniform entered, pushing a mop bucket. Victoria leaned closer. He was startled, but upon seeing her on the ground, he dropped everything and lunged forward without hesitation. He knelt, checked for a pulse. His movements were swift, urgent. He pinched her nose, delivered the breaths, then clasped his hands over her sternum, counting each compression aloud. She studied his face, the clenched jaw, the tear-rimmed eyes, the intense blend of terror and resolve. She saw his dark skin glistening with sweat beneath the harsh lights as he fought for her life. He ignored the shouts behind him, the pointing fingers, the accusations being mouthed. His focus was singular, keeping her alive. Then she saw him. Richard Hartwell, her CFO, approached his face a mask of anger and disgust. He grabbed the janitor's shoulder and yanked him away. Victoria hit pause. Her hands were shaking. She watched the remainder in silence. The janitor was escorted out like a trespasser. No handshake, no gratitude, no acknowledgement. He had saved her life and was being penalized for it. Victoria rose slowly, her chest tightening, not from any cardiac issue, but from a different emotion surging within her. Fury. Raymond, she called, her voice low and cold. Where is Darnell? Washington, ma'am. The man in the video, the janitor. What became of him? A brief silence on the line. He was terminated by HR. There were certain allegations. Victoria nearly hissed. He saved my life, ma'am. There were concerns about optics, liability, media risk. Then listen carefully. Victoria cut him off. Find him, address, file, every detail. I want it on my desk before noon. Yes, Miss Sterling. She hung up, exhaling slowly. Her immaculate kitchen suddenly felt intolerably empty. For the first time since waking in the hospital, she felt a fissure beneath her sternum. Not pain, but shame. Far across the city, in distant Southside Chicago, Darnell Washington knew nothing. He did not know she had seen the footage. Did not know she was replaying the image of his face. Did not know the world that had already shattered him once was poised to tremble again. But he would know soon. 3 days elapsed, and Darnell Washington remained unemployed. His mornings dissolved into silence, punctuated only by the scratch of an old red pen circling job listings in the classified section. Afternoons were spent soliciting work door-to-door laundromats, diners, cleaning companies, any establishment that could offer enough to prevent the lights from being cut off. But everywhere, the response was the same. A hesitant glance, a low whisper, then a cold, polite refusal. By the fourth morning, the name Darnell Washington was a spreading vapor of rumor. At the corner laundromat, a young woman folding clothes glanced at him and spoke quietly. You're the man from that building, correct? The one who ... double quotes. She trailed off when he looked up. No, mine is nothing. Darnell attempted a smile that failed to reach his eyes. It's all right, he said softly. Say it. The man who tried to save someone and was dismissed for it. She pressed her lips together, lowering her voice further. People suggest you did more than that. Darnell did not ask what more than that meant. He already knew. The internet had taken his active CPR and rendered it obscene. Trashy blogs ran headlines like "Janitor couldn't control himself" and "Crossing the line with unconscious female CEO." A grainy still from the security footage had been leaked, blurry but sufficient to sow doubt. The image of him bending to perform a life-saving breath had been converted into damning evidence. Back home, the small apartment smelled of old carpet and stale coffee. Dorothy Freeman sat by the window, wearing reading glasses, studying a newspaper. The city council rejected the minimum wage increase. Again, she muttered, then looked up. Have you eaten? Not yet, Darnell said, rinsing a mug. Let me prepare something for Jasmine first. The girl shuffled into the kitchen, hair tousled, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, are you going to work today? Not today, sweetheart, Darnell answered gently. I'm taking a brief rest. Oh, Jasmine frowned. Miss Doherty said people are being unkind to you. Why? Darnell bent and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes people fear what they do not comprehend. But things will improve, I promise. Dorothy sighed, folding the paper. Son, you cannot defeat the ones who author the narrative. They always prevail. I have no desire to fight, Darnell said quietly. I merely want the truth to be told. That afternoon he rode the bus to a small cleaning service on 18th Street. The owner, a portly man smelling of cigar smoke, glanced over Darnell's application, then set it down. You were employed at Sterling Holdings? Yes, sir. The man nodded slowly, crossing his arms. I'm apprised of that situation. I cannot afford that kind of attention here. My apologies. Darnell's throat dried. The tension? You mean saving a life? I mean controversy, the man stated bluntly. Clients dislike trouble, seek employment elsewhere. When Darnell stepped back outside, the sky had darkened. Wind sliced through his thin coat as he walked along the fractured sidewalk. A group of teenagers stood by a convenience store, their phone screens glowing blue. As he passed, one nudged his friend and spoke loudly enough to be heard. Yo, that's him, the janitor guy. I saw the clip. Dude was seriously kissing that billionaire. Lady Laughter pursued Darnell down the block. By the time he reached the bus stop, his eyes were burning. He sat, head bowed, arms wrapped around his body as if to keep himself from splintering. Home. Dorothy was on the phone, her voice hushed and strained. Seeing him, she covered the receiver. It's your sister, she says. People at church are speaking about it. They saw a video online. Darnell closed his eyes. Inevitably, that night, he attempted to delete his social media. But with every attempt, another fake profile surfaced bearing his image and vile captions. Single dad hunting billionaire, man who assaulted female CEO. He powered the phone off and sat in the dark. The silence was so profound that the hum of the refrigerator seemed the only sound left in existence. When he finally lay beside Jasmine, his body felt leaden. His back still ached from the blow sustained in the boardroom. He pressed his hand against the bruise, remembering the sharp, dull impact, the forced expulsion of his breath. "Justice is not blind," he whispered. "It merely refuses to look down." In the middle of the night, the phone rang. He bolted awake, fumbling to answer. "Mr. Washington." The voice was sharp, scripted, and cold. "This is Human Resources from Sterling Holdings. Our internal investigation has concluded." His heart lurched. "So, does that mean your employment is terminated effective immediately?" The woman interrupted. "The internal review has determined your conduct to be inappropriate. We will not press charges, but we strongly advise against returning to the premises." Darnell sat bolt upright, stone cold. "Inappropriate. I was administering CPR. She wasn't breathing. The decision is final, Mr. Washington. Your remaining wages will be mailed." The call ended. The line went dead clean, merciless, as if what had never existed. For a long moment Darnell sat with the dead phone pressed to his ear, staring into the darkness. Jasmine stirred, mumbling about pancakes in her sleep. He looked at her, his chest aching. What could he tell her in the morning? That her father lost his job for saving a life. That the truth is immaterial when the narrator's poor and invisible. Darnell leaned back against the headboard, his eyes burning. "God," he whispered. "If you are listening, what should I do now?" Outside, thunder rolled. Rain began to drum against the windowpane. The leaky gutter provided a steady, mocking rhythm, like an untiring heartbeat. Across the city, in a brightly lit penthouse, Victoria Sterling sat before her laptop. The video had concluded, but the image of Darnell kneeling beside her remained seared into her mind. She saw the fear, the determination, the courage, and the horror as he was forcibly removed like a criminal. She paused the footage again, leaning back, her shoulders rigid. She had constructed a billion-dollar empire upon decisive action and faith in structure. But this had evaded her notice like smoke, and it had nearly ruined a man. Her jaw tightened. "Find him," she murmured to the silent room, "before this goes too far." Victoria Sterling did not summon her driver. She pulled on jeans and a sweater, grabbing her own car keys. The black Mercedes glided through the city like a shadow as she drove south, watching the glass towers yield to old brick, peeling murals, and windows bordered with warped plywood. It had been years since she had navigated the city herself. This felt correct. Darnell's neighborhood was an entirely different world from her kingdom of glass and gold. Potholes jarred her wheels. Children played on muddy lots around rusted cars. A vendor sold hot dogs from a battered cart. Thick clouds of white steam rising in the sharp cold. She found the address. A low brown building with flaking paint and a sagging metal staircase. She parked, stepped out, and the December air cut her like a knife. She knocked. After a few seconds, the door creaked open. A small girl appeared, her hair hastily tied, her t-shirt too thin. Her eyes widened. You're the lady from the billboard?" she whispered. "I'm looking for Darnell," Victoria said, softening her voice. "He resides here, correct?" The girl's face crumpled with worry. "He is unwell," she said quietly. "He will not get up. I tried making soup. I tried giving him medicine. Nothing helped. He just keeps saying he's tired, then he lies down again." Victoria's throat tightened. "How long has he been like this?" "Since he lost his job," the girl replied. "He stopped eating. He kept saying, 'It's not fair,' then he just stopped." Victoria gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was tiny, the walls faded, the heater rumbling but barely warming the space. Darnell lay curled on a thin mattress in the corner, shrouded in 2 worn blankets. His face was gaunt, his cheeks hollow, his breathing frighteningly shallow. She knelt beside him. "Darnell," she whispered. "To me, Victoria Sterling." He did not stir. She took his hand. It was burning with fever. "Call an ambulance," she shouted toward the hallway now. The girl stood frozen, clutching a ragged teddy bear, her eyes wide with terror. Victoria squeezed Darnell's hand tighter. "You fought for my life?" she murmured, her voice fracturing. "Now it is my turn to fight for yours." As the distant wail of sirens began to echo through the street, she looked at the man who had pulled her back from death and understood one thing. Clearly this time she would not permit him to fade away. Asterisk. The ambulance arrived silently, lights spinning. Paramedics worked with swift efficiency, asking clipped, rapid questions. Victoria barely registered the moment Darnell's inert body was lifted onto the stretcher. She stepped into the ambulance without hesitation, ignoring the neighbors who peered from windows and porches. Inside, a paramedic clipped an oxygen monitor to Darnell's finger and secured a blood pressure cuff. Severe dehydration, temperature over 103, shallow respiration. "How long has this persisted?" Victoria gripped the edge of the seat. "I don't know, I've just discovered him." "This is systemic stress," the paramedic muttered, suspending an IV bag. "We must stabilize him quickly." The ambulance jolted onto the main road. Victoria glanced down at Darnell's face, ashen, sunken, beads of sweat on his forehead. She reached out carefully, interlacing her fingers with his. avoiding the forward tubing. His fingers remained limp, but she maintained the contact. "You fought to sustain me," she murmured. "Do not surrender now." "Wait," the paramedic interjected, his eyes widening as recognition dawned. "You're Victoria Sterling." Victoria nodded. Stiffly, he looked from her to Darnell. "He's the one who—" "Yes," she confirmed. The paramedic said nothing further, but his expression shifted to one of profound respect. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a private medical center on the north side, one of the city's finest. Victoria had called ahead. A team of doctors and nurses waited at the emergency entrance, taking swift control, rushing Darnell through the doors. Victoria followed until a nurse gently barred her way. "We will care for him, Miss Sterling. Please wait here." She nodded, stepping back, her eyes fixed on the stretcher until it vanished. The waiting room was impeccable. Soft leather, warm lighting, gentle jazz emanating from a corner piano. But to Victoria the atmosphere felt submerged, muted. She sat, paced, and sat again. She called Pamela Crawford, her legal assistant. "He is at Northside Medical. Cancel all engagements for the next 2 days and bring his daughter, Jasmine, here. She is alone at home. I will execute it immediately," Pamela affirmed. When Jasmine arrived with a social worker about an hour later, Victoria was watching thin snowflakes descend upon the Chicago skyline. She turned upon hearing the girl's voice. "Is my daddy all right?" Victoria knelt to meet Jasmine at eye level. "The doctors are attending to him. Your father is very strong. He once saved my life. Remember, I believe he will do it again." Jasmine nodded, trying to be brave, clutching her teddy bear tightly. "I prepared soup for him, but he wouldn't eat. I tried my best." "You did more than your best," Victoria said gently. "You cared for him as he cared for me." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Miss Sterling, you may visit him now." Victoria stood, took Jasmine's hand, and followed the nurse into a quiet, private room. Darnell lay on the bed, an oxygen tube beneath his nose, full fluids steadily dripping. His chest rose and fell slowly, rhythmically. "He will recover," the nurse said softly. "Severe exhaustion, dehydration, malnutrition. His immune system collapsed under stress, but he's responding well. His vitals are stabilizing." Victoria released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you." Jasmine stepped to the bedside and placed a teddy bear on her father's chest. "I took care of you, Daddy," she whispered. Victoria stood beside the bed, observing Darnell. His face was less gray. The lines softened her. She pulled up a chair, sat, and remained there for a long time. Jasmine eventually curled up asleep in the corner, wrapped in a hospital blanket. A nurse brought soup and crackers, but Victoria barely touched them. She sat, watching Darnell, her mind sifting through layers of guilt and doubt. She recalled the board meeting, the morning he entered, the way no one looked at him, the way even she hadn't given him a second glance. He had moved through that room like air, and yet that invisible man was the one who preserved her life. It was not merely a medical procedure. It was an act of defiance against power, a confrontation of fear, a stand against a system that expected him to bow, remain silent, and disappear. She could not erase what had occurred, but she could, and would alter everything that followed. Hours passed. Night settled.